Hello, everybody. This is Gerald Salenti, and it's Wednesday, May 31st, 2023. And once again, we have with us a man of men that no one in America can match when it comes to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Oh, two things that we don't have anymore, but he knows a lot about them. It's Judge Andrew Napolitano, a real paisano, and a man that cares about the spirit of America, what America was founded upon, and how it's been lost. And Judge, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Gerald. You know, you say we don't have them anymore, and we say it with a little bit of humor. Unfortunately, there's more truth than humor. The Bill of Rights has become a Bill of Privileges that the government, like a water spigot, thinks it can turn on in good times and turn off in bad times, even though the Bill of Rights restrains the government from interfering with our personal natural rights that don't come from the government, that the government has no moral authority to interfere with, but it does every day.
It's so sad what's happened to this country and how it's gone down. But again, you know, as you point out in your article that's coming out tomorrow, Government by Experts, and it's about, you know, the Supreme Court and regarding an environmental issue. But you go on here, you know, to say how the people that destroyed this country were two little egomaniacs. One Abraham Lincoln, which everybody loves because they don't know any of the details of what he's done. And you go on to mention that because of the Civil War that he started, which had nothing to do with slavery. Correct. The only slavery that happened was we became slaves of the federal government. And how many people he killed, some 750,000, destroyed the South, the beautiful buildings and the culture that was created when the nation was founded. And Woodrow Wilson, another murderous little piece of crap that gave us the World War I. You point out the bankster bandits, the Federal Reserve System, federal income tax, and robbing us of our constitutional rights by passing, what was that act that he passed?
The Espionage Act.
Yeah, espionage.
Right. I mean, the Espionage Act, the government is used to punish speech. Norman Thomas, the socialist leader, who was an undergraduate at Princeton with Woodrow Wilson. Now, this is obviously long before he's a professor and president there, so they knew each other, spent 2.5 years in a federal prison for speaking against World War I under the Espionage Act. The Department of Justice persuaded a federal judge and jury that he was harming the nation's national security by arguing we had no business getting in a fight between the last vestiges of European royalty over the borders between their kingdoms. But Wilson, of course, wanted us involved and punished the speech of those who opposed him. Wilson actually sent a federal agent, you'll get a kick out of this, to arrest Princeton students. Now, he's president now of the United States. He had been the president of Princeton. He sent a federal agent to arrest Princeton students. What was their crime? They were reading the Declaration of Independence out loud in front of a draft office, and they were arrested for interfering with the draft. And when people questioned the president, so what about the First Amendment? He said, well, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law infringing upon the freedom of speech. I'm not the Congress. It doesn't pertain to me. Such a statement in a law school today would result in an F, because the First Amendment stops all government from interfering with the freedom of speech. Little historical footnote. What was the name of the federal agent sent to Trenton by Wilson to arrest these Princeton students? John Edgar Hoover.
That little slimy piece of crap.
Yep. And the rest, of course, is history.
Yep. Now, this guy, you know, you mentioned about, what was the name of that? His fellow student that he put in jail for 2 years.
Oh, Norman Thomas, the socialist leader. Yes.
Because he said that. Why?
Because he spoke out against the war. Or
And what did
argued that World War I was none of our business and we shouldn't commit American lives to a battle over borders between European countries. Does that sound familiar?
Yep. And once upon a time, there was somebody that was a real warrior, and he was president. His name was George Washington. And he said, quote, "It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliance with any portion of the foreign world. Overgrown military establishments, which under any form of government are inauspicious to liberty, and which are to be regarded as particularly hostile to Republican liberty," meaning the Republic of America. And all that's lost now.
Oh, NATO. This is one thing that I agreed, one of several that I agreed very much with Trump on. We had no business being involved in NATO. The whole concept, the whole principle is antithetical to America staying out of foreign wars. I mean, this NATO thing is absurd. There's about to be a coup in Belarus, in Belarus, someplace that most Americans probably never heard of. President of Belarus is a good friend of Vladimir Putin. The military is about to conduct a coup there. The Polish military is going to enter the country in order to further the coup, and the Russian military is going to enter the country to oppose the coup. Russians against Poles under the NATO treaty. We'd be obliged to come in and fight the Russians in support of the Poles. This is absurd, but this is what the NATO treaty requires. So if Joe Biden's looking for an excuse for troops on the ground, he's about to have it.
You know, we had a big rally, of course, this past weekend, and unfortunately you couldn't make it because
Sorry,
you
I
were in
missed it.
Switzerland. And it was great. And it started at 1:00 in the afternoon. And I'm walking over about 12:30, and there's this guy outside screaming. We had a big flag going across. You know, it's "Make America Healthy Again," yelling out, "Zelensky's nothing more than a Putin puppet."
Oh, God.
And so, of course, you know me, I'm very quiet and gentle.
Yeah, right. You ignored him.
Right. Yeah, I ignored him. I said, well, I started running over there. I said, don't you call me that, you? And I went after this guy. He ran across the street. I said, you come over here and talk to me like that. And with using other language.
Right.
I said, you little coward. Anyway, you're talking about not being involved in foreign affairs. Most of the little clown boys and girls up here in Kingston, they all support America fighting in Ukraine, and they hate me. They hate me because I believe in the founding fathers and what this nation was founded upon. How dare I? How dare I be a true American when they're all a bunch of little low-life, cowardly slime? They're little Lindsey Graham lovers. A little slob that couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag.
Did you hear what he said yesterday or Sunday to President Zelensky?
Yep.
Killing Russians. Best money we ever spent.
Yep.
Talk about provoking the bear. Talking about public language so profoundly inappropriate for a person in the government. Talk about wanting to bring about World War III. Talk about wanting to use Ukraine as a battering ram against the Kremlin. Just despicable.
Just despicable. And the people up here are despicable. By the way, we had people coming from coast to coast, from Canada to America. They came from all over. And not a word in the main street, not a word we sent our press releases to local newspapers, nothing. No coverage for peace. Peace is not allowed. You are a little slime, Zelensky, for speaking about peace and being a warrior for the Prince of Peace when we're all a bunch of cowards who couldn't. Again, these are the little lowlives, and my generation as well, that protested the Vietnam War. You know why? Because they were getting drafted.
Right, right.
But they
Well,
don't protest
Harold, the
these
next
wars.
rally that you have will probably have as its featured speaker Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
That's right.
Then the press will line up to cover it.
Yep.
Line up, and that line will go all the way out to the highway.
Yep. And we had Dennis Kucinich here, was terrific. One speaker after another, and the people were wonderful. But you know, these people call themselves liberals. Liberal, willing to respect or accept behavior or opinions different from one's own, open to new ideas. That's the definition. They're not open to new ideas. They don't respect other opinions that are different than theirs. Liberal, relating to or denoting a political and social philosophy that promotes individual rights. Why, how dare you say individual rights? You should only believe what I tell you to believe. And that goes back to your article that's coming out tomorrow about what they're doing to us and how the Supreme Court on one issue has gone in the right direction. Could you tell us more about that?
Correct. You know, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Administration, says it can regulate mud puddles.
Yeah.
And it uses as its basis for that authority a phrase, the navigable waters of the United States. And Justice Alito, and a unanimous Supreme Court said there's nothing navigable about a mud puddle. The EPA's experts said, oh, wait a minute. The mud puddle releases water into the earth, and it's connected by the water table to this stream and to that river and to that ocean. And therefore, it's all connected. And the Supreme Court said this is a violation of property rights. Unanimous opinion, a violation of property rights. There are thousands of people in this country who own real estate that they pay real estate taxes on. They can't build on it and they can't use it because of this EPA regulation, which the Supreme Court has now just thrown out. So I was shocked that it was a unanimous opinion. I was ecstatic that it was a unanimous opinion upholding private property rights over an administrative agency created by Woodrow Wilson, an administrative agency expanding its own authority. Didn't get the authority from Congress. It just rewrote its own rules, and it interpreted those rules, and it enforced those rules. This went before the Supreme Court not too long ago, and they ruled the other way. This Supreme Court unanimously, once and for all, said, you guys can't expand your own authority. The real issue will come into play is when Congress writes that authority down specifically. I'm not worried about that happening now, but it could if the Democrats controlled both houses of Congress. Although there's not much difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, if you want to segue into debt, because Kevin McCarthy sounds like Nancy Pelosi when it comes to letting Joe Biden borrow all the money he wants.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. You know, when you look at the real debt level, by the way, it's more like 280 trillion.
Correct. That's the unfunded liabilities, the commitments the federal government has made to human beings for which there is no money to back it up. But what's particularly despicable about this McCarthy negotiated deal is it's not a number. There's no number. Okay, Joe, you can borrow another $2 trillion. It's open-ended.
Yep.
It's open-ended. They can borrow as much as the government, as much as the public will lend them. Not just the public. The Chinese government is lending them money too. China and its entities own 1/3 of our debt. So at this rate, by 2030, 7 years from now, the defense budget will be $1 trillion. The interest on the debt will be $1 trillion. Social Security will be $1 trillion. That will leave $1 trillion more in income tax revenue for everything else in the government. Stated differently, it will build in the government borrowing about 6 to 7 trillion a year. Back to Woodrow Wilson. He borrowed 30 billion with a B to fight World War I. We are still paying interest on that debt. What's the interest we've paid so far? 15 billion. You imagine that? Only the federal government would pay a 50% interest rate. Have we retired the principal? Absolutely not. We've rolled it over, but we haven't retired it. We're still paying the debt on it. That's the way the government operates. These clowns from both political parties, pro-war, pro-national security state, pro-welfare state, pro-big government. Oh yeah, there's a Republican wing and a Democrat wing, but their cultural, their mindset is the same. And their mindset is take from the haves, give to the have-nots. Even give to those who have, give to big corporations as well. Military-industrial complex.
Well, you talk about the military-industrial complex. Well, look at the deal that they're making with this debt ceiling. They're increasing the military spending. No, they're not going to cut back on the defense spending. No, we're going to increase it. I think I think in 2025 it's going to almost go. It's almost going to be $900 billion just for the military industrial complex without putting the so-called intelligence into it.
Senator Graham is opposed to this because there's not enough of an increase for the military.
Yeah. And you know how they keep quoting this clown like he's a somebody when he's just a little nobody, and they have him everywhere.
He is everywhere. This week he is everywhere, yes.
Yeah. You know, I remember when Fox used to come up here to Kingston. You know, they had the trucks and they used to do this, you know, remember those days? And
the huge antenna would come out of the top of the truck.
Yeah. And they're doing live, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we have to take a break. Senator Lindsey Graham is on right now and cutting me off. So you hear this clown when you can hear him BS all day long, any way you want.
I wish that I had been a fly on the wall so I could have heard what you said when they cut you off for Senator Graham. It probably made it sound very much like what you said to that guy who accused you of being in Putin's pocket.
Yeah. Anyway, it's so sad what's happened to this country, but this rally that we had last week, and everybody could go down, you know, this channel is right there when right on top there, and listen to the speakers, and you could go to occupypeace.com as well. But as I said, and I'm the first one to say it, and I'll keep saying it, that the perfect ticket for the 2024 race to the White House would be RFK Jr. for president and Judge Andrew Napolitano for vice president. It's a winning ticket. It's getting people from across the spectrum. And most importantly, it's getting the people that are activists for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These aren't the nobodies that just follow the dumbbells. These are activists that'll keep pushing this forward. And also very interesting, Judge, what's going on in Russia. You started mentioning it about ramping up the war and what, could you repeat again what Lindsey Graham said?
He said to President Zelensky, killing Russians, it's the best money we ever spent. Now, if that's not poking the bear, if that's not provoking President Putin, reminding him that American boys using American military equipment are firing American ammunition at Russian boys, I don't know what is. And he happens to have said this. I don't know if he knew this was going to happen on the eve of Ukrainian drones exploding in a residential neighborhood of Moscow, 10 minutes from where President Putin lives. Could you imagine if Russian drones exploded 10 minutes from the White House? Well, would there be World War III? We would, send the nukes over immediately.
Well, there's the cover of the Trench Journal.
Wow.
Remember that one?
Yeah. Very prophetic.
Well, drone strike on Kremlin, it's okay. Drone strike on the White House, America goes to war. And that's what's going to happen. And the people are totally ignorant to this and have no facts about it. And how could the Ukrainians have the skills to shoot? Where did these missiles come from? How did they know where to go? Who was behind this?
These are questions I'm going to put to Colonel McGregor later today. I don't know the answers to this, but it's one of two. Either Zelensky is a wild card who does whatever he wants and kills whoever he thinks he can kill, or this was orchestrated by his American masters. I think it's more likely it was the latter. And the head of those masters is this fellow Princetonian of mine, although she's a few years younger than I am, Victoria Nuland.
Oh.
She's the one that wants the U.S. to invade Crimea. I mean, this is really insane. This is like the Chinese taking over Mexico and demanding Arizona back.
You know, we have actually talking about Victoria Nuland. We have an article in this week's Trends Journal. World War III. Victoria Nuland, the EU Nuland admits that the U.S. has been helping Ukraine plan for counteroffensive.
Yes.
So that article is in this week's Trends Journal. It just went out last night. And everybody tune into The Judge to hear what's going to happen with Colonel McGregor, Douglas McGregor, because he's a man that really knows what's going on here. So you go to Judging Freedom and tune in and see what's going on so you could be on top of the news and ahead of the trends. Judge, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you,
Everybody,
Gerald. Pleasure as always, my man.
Yeah, please do what you can to help support us. These rallies, people think they're doing me a favor. And that by supporting peace. It's not about me. You got it. This takes a lot of energy and a lot of money to put on. So we need your help to do it. This guy, what's his name? Sam Zell, a billionaire, died a couple of weeks ago. What did Sam Zell go to hell? I mean, what did Sam Zell do in his life to help the human race and all living things? What are the billionaires doing to help the people live better lives and restore peace and freedom? What are they doing? Not a penny for peace from the billionaires or the multimillionaires. So please do what you can to support us, because we're doing everything we can to support you. And don't forget, tune in to The Judge, because he's judging freedom. Thanks a lot, Judge.
Thank you, Gerald. All the best.